Well, we messed it up. We completely collapsed the country, so let's move out. Let's go somewhere else. Maybe we'll get it right the second time around. America, fuck yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Well, shit. Enjoying my Canadian coffee while sitting in America. Consequently, that coffee at Costco is, I think, $25 last I looked. So it did go up. It's $25 in Canada too. But if I take my US dollar and I go to Canada, you get $1.30 Canadian for every US dollar. Yeah, that's something's not math in there. I thought tariffs and shit. Tariffs are the problem with our whole fucking thing. The America's collapsing because tariffs. That's so much bullshit flowing around out there. So my last video kind of popped, so I figured let's keep the conversation going because it's interesting. I like hearing the other perspectives on this, even the ones I don't agree with. But invariably over the years, as I've been talking about retirement, semi-retirement, early retirement, and realizing it's that I fucked it up, didn't do it right, and taking personal ownership of that. Something a lot of people on the internet seem to be lacking at the moment. I'm in this position not because of politics or Trump or Biden or whatever. I'm in this position because I did not save for retirement. I figured I would be dead by now, and here I am. But invariably, as I've discussed these things in my quest to become a minimalist, I'm nomadic by nature. I don't need a house. I can sleep wherever, And having spent 21 years, minus the 5 years I've managed to retire here and there, if not all at once, obviously, I've slept in this box a lot, And invariably, I always get somebody in my comments then that tell me their love story on how they've moved to either Southeast Asia, Thailand, Philippines, or South America, or Mexico. I actually know somebody who's planning to move to Mexico, because much cheaper, because my Trump, okay, good luck. And they always suggest it to me. Now, I'm going to preface this. I don't give a fuck what you do. If you want to do that, that's fine. This video is going to be to explain why I don't want to do that, even if it is cheaper. This is, I served my country. I was in the Air Force for 10 years, or the Chair Force for you Marines out there. How do you think the guy that stormed the beach in Normandy and watched 5 or 6 of his friends pass away, I have to be careful, because, it's America. It's freedom of speech, right? How do you think that guy would think if he was watching TikTok today about everybody whining about their life and finance and then saying they're just going to leave the country? How do you think he would respond to that? You know, it's essentially like saying, we know you went through this miserable war and you watched a lot of your friends pass away and you did all of this shit only for us to fuck it up and abandon it. You know, wouldn't it have been a waste of time for him to go to war then? This is what we do with it. If we just run it into the ground and then move, you know, and you can see this currently in real time, how that mentality works. When you look at the migrant crisis, particularly in the UK, and I thought we were bad here with people killing people on the highway. Yeah, the UK is no joke right now with that shit. With the, let's bring a bunch of illegal immigrants in and give them free shit, tell them they're going to get free shit, sell them the dream, only to produce a slave labor force and voters for a certain party. You bring all of these people in, they're not coming there to become UK citizens. They're there to make money and prosper and then take some of that back home. Or to essentially turn the UK into whatever their country is. They bring the same values with them, is my point. They bring the same thing, and it doesn't work. We see it doesn't work. We're seeing it in our own country. We're seeing it all over the world, and a lot of countries are like, oh, we fucked that up. And it just doesn't work. So what would happen if Americans did that? If we here in the United States just said, well, we fucked this up. It's violent out. There's unrest, the politics, the money is inflation and more inflation. I can't pay my bills. They're raising all my prices. And so I'm going to go to this XYZ country where I can live off of $500 a month. What would happen if a bunch of us did that? What would happen? First of all, these countries aren't going to allow that. They're going to be like, oh, we got too many people coming in. Now we got to up the requirements. You got to be worth $1 million to go in there, or whatever. These countries aren't just letting everyone in. They're like, who benefits our country to let in? That's how that works. And if you can ask these same people, the requirements are getting tighter now because too many motherfucking Americans coming in, and you ruin the local economy when you do, because you're bringing your American income that barely gives you a living in San Francisco, and you're going into this place where the average income is like $20 a day. What do you think that does to the local population there? Do you think that suddenly that local population's going to get $20 more a day? Maybe they'll make $100 a day now that you're there. No. You basically destroy their prices, that they don't get raises just because you showed up. And then the price of things go up because you're consuming. And the more Americans that come in there and do that, the worse it is for the people of that country. So I defended this country for 10 years. Now, granted, it's chair force, but it's still 10 years of my life that I willingly gave up. So I cannot fathom just walking away. And I have every reason to walk away. I'm dating, I have a Canadian girlfriend. I spend literally half my free time in Canada. And that gives me a lot of perspective. That, yeah, my dollar goes a little farther on some things. Like, I can go up into a restaurant there and save 30% on a meal out on the town. Whereas if I do that here, it's more expensive. But at the same time, if I go to their gas pump, it costs me more in US dollars to fill my tank in Canada than it does here in the US. Wonder why that is. Must be tariffs. No, it was like that before tariffs. I've been doing this a while. Plus, I worked on the Canadian fleet back in the day. For 3 years, I drove truck in Canada. And I didn't do any illegal U-turns, even though I didn't speak the language. So, the solution isn't to leave your country. The solution is to change your personal life. Make your life better. Focus on you. You're not going to change your neighbor down the street who's doom spending their way with $150,000 of credit card debt on top of a $75,000 student loan for gender studies or whatever the fuck, and a house that's mortgaged to the hilt, and the brand new Bugatti in the fucking driveway and they work over at Starbucks. You're not going to fix them. They're lost. They're gone. They're not going to turn it around. They're so caught up in that they won't listen to reason. But what you can do is realize where you're fucking up, and that's what I'm trying to do right now. Realize where you're screwing up in life and fix your life. Now, easier said than done, right? I already can see the comments that are coming in. I gotta, I've got all my bills I can't pay. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I'm spending more, and, the same thing that you see is the popular trend on TikTok or whatever, of getting online and complaining that everything's just unsustainable at this point. And it's because of the entitlement, I feel like. And I've noticed it. So I've been all over this country. I've driven over the road for the majority of my trucking career. When things became untenable in New York under Cuomo because of the certain thing that happened in 2020, I immediately hopped in a truck and spent the majority of my time. I went down to the Florida Keys. I did all kinds of shit, and I got to see the difference in every state. And it's the same thing for the cost of living. There are places in the United States where you can buy a house for $30,000. That's it. 30 grand. You might need a little bit of fixing, so we can call it 50. You probably need to put 20 in repairs in or whatever. In areas with zero crime. No crime whatsoever. You want to know why that house is 30 grand? There's not a Walmart in sight. There's not some of them do have a Family Dollar. And those fuckers, they really got out there into the middle of nowhere. I don't know how they keep those businesses going. But, I've seen it with my own eyes. These places people live. I've driven my trucks right by their house and been like, wow. And then you look it up on the internet and it's like 30 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand, 80, 90 grand gets you a fucking palace in these areas. But the reason is nobody's there. Nobody wants to go there because there's nothing to do. If you don't have good internet, fuck it. There's nobody's moving there. If you can't stare at your phone, then it's not going to happen. So, bottom line, obviously I have to give up all of these creature comforts to go there. Well, that's not as hard as you think it is. Let me explain. So my girlfriend lives in Canada, which, contrary to what the Canadians like to say, and particularly the Canadian boomers, that they're better than everyone and that kind of horse shit, when you go up there, they've got just as bad, if not worse, inflation in food, definitely worse inflation when it comes to fuel, and their housing market is downright atrocious. Now, this country has the biggest landmass in the fucking world. Yet, if you buy a house in the middle of nowhere, you're looking at $200,000 to $300,000 for maybe 1,300 square feet, 1,400, 1,500 if you remodel the basement, 1,600 something, something like that. And if you want to go to Ottawa or Toronto or Montreal or one of those, millions of dollars. We're talking the cheapest shithole is 900 grand in Canadian dollars. But my point is, even living in the middle of nowhere is not a solution in Canada. Now, the lifestyle is not as bad as you think. You know, my girlfriend lives in a town with hardly anybody there. You know, they got a little store, a little gas station, and a bar. And, you know, it's a French-speaking town, so I don't, you know, nobody speaks well, some people speak my language, but there are people there that only speak French. And I only speak English, so you can imagine the logistics of that. And they don't like me there, by the way. They don't want me there. They don't want a bunch of us going over to Canada, as much as the liberals want to say, I'm leaving, I'm going to Canada. They don't want you there. They got their own fucking problems. You know. But that being said, the way you live out in the middle of nowhere is you do things in doses. You try and combine activities that require a city. For example, you want to go to Walmart. Well, you're going to drive an hour and a half, or maybe even take a ferry or something along those lines to get to the nearest Walmart. You want to buy groceries. You might have to drive 30 to 45 minutes to the next town. And even then, you're not getting the full run of groceries. You're getting small town groceries. You want big city groceries? Hour and a half drive. Work. That's the big one. That's what prevents people from going to these places with the $30,000, $40,000 houses. These towns used to be something. You know, a lot of these are in West Virginia where all the coal mines dried up, and, you know, now all they got is a little bit of meth and a dream. You know, but it's cheap, and believe it or not, the crime is low, but the poverty rate is through the roof because there's no jobs. The median income matches the housing level. So if I were to apply the logic of moving to another country, obviously I have to have a U.S. income to bring to that country. And they want you to. There's plenty of visas that cover that. But there's no job. So if you're working locally in these places and you're not making your money online or making YouTube videos and getting 50 grand a month or some shit, you know, to where you could stretch that to living like a king in these places, you know, it's really not hard to live in the middle of nowhere. It's inconvenient, and some would argue fucking boring, but if all you do is go home and watch Netflix and stare at your phone every fucking night, why do you need to be in San Francisco or New York City to do that? And you're going to live a lot better out there. You're going to have more space. You're going to have better neighbors, better communities than you'll have in the big cities, which now you can't even go to the fucking corner store without worrying about getting stabbed. You know, it's a question of trying to fix America instead of, oh, it's all done, I'm leaving, bye, y'all have fun. I helped fuck it up while I was here, but now I'm going to leave, and you guys just, you next generation, we took all of our wealth and we're going to go bring it over to Thailand, but fuck you, you guys can have what's left. You got the fucking sloppy thirds of our generations. You know, have a nice day, Gen Z, or Gen Alpha, or all you motherfuckers, you know, who can't leave. They don't have income. They don't have retirement funds. They don't have anything. They got student loans and credit card debt. 1.12 trillion first quarter of 2025 in credit card debt. 1 in 5 people, look this shit up, is doom spending. I'm going to do a whole video on that. I got a lot to say on the doom spending versus doom saving argument. Look forward to that in the future. Subscribe. Subscribe for more shit, and I'll make that shit. That being said, I don't want to abandon my country. I know there are places that I can go, especially as a nomad who honestly was planning on van lifing in my retirement years. But there's places I can go. And places that me and my girlfriend will eventually go. We're not in positions to do that yet. I still have my mother here in New York. I'm still going to be here for her. I'm trying to do this so that I can drop down to part-time and all of that. so I can have time with my girlfriend, so I can get those retirement spurts in, because you can't do it in one shot anymore. The days of saving in your 401k, they're gone for most people. Yes, I know there's people that are boomers right now that are 100% set. You did the right shit. The new generation hasn't even started to do that. They don't even know, most of them. And the culture is not replacing itself, which means someday, there's going to be no young people to pay the bills, to do the work. The work that everyone feels entitled to, and the prices through the roof for the ones that are. You think inflation's bad now. That's hyperinflation once we run out of young people. Better start making babies, If you're a Gen Z or younger, you better be planning a traditional family. Or when you're my age or you're a boomer age, woo, that's going to suck. You got to have one kid per person just to stay where we are as a population. We're behind the curve for the last 40 years. So, yeah, start taking a good hard look at like South Korea and Japan right now, or even places here in the United States. I was watching this guy on YouTube. I can't even fucking tell you the name of him right now, but he keeps popping up in my feed. There's this genre on YouTube where people drive around different towns, and show you how people live, how, what their economy is like, how much crime there is, shit like that. And I've been watching that kind of stuff for kind of a long time. I'm curious. I'm a trucker. I drive through a lot of these places, and I always wonder what's life like there. And it's hard to explore when you're in this box, but it's better when you're. I kind of wanted to do that for a while, to be honest, on this channel. Just kind of hop in the van and van life my way around into places where people don't go to hang out, and see what's life like there. And I've met people that live in a small town in the middle of nowhere in the USA, and they're paying $500 a month to rent a house. $500 a month, all included. Rent a house in the middle of fucking nowhere. All right, that's how it is. See, the problem is most people, they don't want to take their lifestyle down. Even though our lifestyle is completely funded by debt. I see people that are complaining, and I see people playing these videos. I was watching one the other day, and it's this guy crying on, how he's working 3 jobs and they can't make ends meet. And he's going on and on about everything's going up, this is going up, that's going up. And then he just, in passing, mentions that he bought a brand new car. Same fuck up I did, by the way. I'm not standing on some lofty pier going, hey, you guys suck. I'm great. No, I did the same fucking thing. But I'm at least self-aware enough to know I fucked up. So, when I'm whining about shit, I know it's of my own making. You can even go back to my whining videos. I'm like, I fucked up. And a lot of you in the comments were like, yeah, you fucked up. Just glazes over the fact that he bought a new vehicle. Which is double stupid financially. All right? You buy a new vehicle, as soon as you drive it off the lot, you lose 10% of the money that you got the loan for. And now you can finance the motherfucker for 7 years because my payments are low. Till your insurance comes into the picture, but leave that aside. In 7 years, that thing's going to be rusted out piece of shit, and you're still going to be paying on it, but sometimes you got to have nice things, right? I need a new car. If you go back in my channel, how good was I doing with a fully paid for Prius that not only did I get, I think it was $5 or $6 grand on my trade-in for when I bought the fucking van I have now. Don't even get me started. I used it to travel the country. It saved me thousands of dollars in hotels because you could run it all night and climate control and all of that. I stayed in downtown Vegas for $25 a night. Who do you know does that? So, right on the strip. Of course, I might have been murdered in my sleep, but it is what it is. Sometimes you got to do things, sacrifices to save money. That being said, when I was debt-free, because I've been debt-free for a long time, this fuck up with the credit cards and the van, that's a recent mistake, and it was just, I wanted the van. That's what started it. And then the van broke, and then the credit card debt came because I had to pay for the van. I didn't have an emergency fund. I didn't do any of the right things, and that's the mess that I'm currently cleaning up, and that's why I'm locked in this prison for now. But that being said, I've now sampled both lifestyles, and I can tell you the debt-free lifestyle is the way to go. Turns out Dave Ramsey was onto something. Although he glorifies wealth a little too much, I believe in time more than wealth. But we can get into that when I do the doom spending video. So, the solution is not to abandon your country. All right? Clean up your mess. Because if you leave and people just start following that trend, if it becomes a thing, they're just going to bring their mess to another country and fuck that up. Do you think we're going to go over there and live how the people live in the local area? We're going to give up all the things that we're used to? No. Not to mention family, friends, all of that. If you go overseas, you're on your own. You're going to have to make new friends over there. New family. Or bring family with you if you can. I'm not in a position to do that. My girlfriend can't just go up and leave. She's got a lot of obligations. I have some obligations, though arguably a lot less now than I used to. And yeah, you're in the wrong place. This is for trucks, motherfucker. I don't want to leave. This country is my home. As much shit as I talk about it. I gave a lot to this country. I'd like to have some golden years, positive golden years return on my investment in America. I've invested in this country, and I'm trying to get a return. But I am aware that the reason this country exists is because I have the opportunity to do these things. Opportunities that go away in some other countries. Corruption is global now. Inflation is global now. How long before those livable countries become too expensive for your savings or your investments to pay for? How long do you get over there before you're fucking broke? Are you going to sustain that if you live to be 80 or 90? With what you're doing now? I mean, only you know that. I know. Not me. I wouldn't be able to do it. Unless this channel somehow boosted to where I make $5,000 a month. And I had a girlfriend that was willing to go with me. And I could just go over there. I'm a nomad. I'd be fine traveling over there. But I think I'd do better just finding a nice quiet place, buying a house if I could ever afford it, or buying a piece of land to park on. That's probably the better idea, if I do that at all. As a trucker, I haven't had to pay rent in a very long time. And that's been a huge financial advantage that I still somehow managed to fuck up with debt. But when I'm looking around and I listen to these fuckers on there and on TikTok or whatever, whining, I'm nowhere near in the deep shit that they're in. I'm already halfway through paying off my credit card debt as of this week. Car payments, now I'm not close to paying that fucking thing off. But pretty soon my credit card debt will be zero. It'll just be use and pay off every month to make the points. I'm still keeping them because I already know they can get you out of shit if you're ever overwhelmed with things. But that being said, I'm not going to pay interest on credit cards anymore. That's the goal. There. If I use the credit card to buy something, I pay it off immediately or within the week. That's going to be the model I started with before I fucked up. So, but it's still, the temptation's always there, you know. The solution isn't for me to leave, and my girlfriend would love it if I just went and moved to Canada, but they're worse as far as inflation, as far as cost of living, as far as jobs, as far as everything. I don't see it being nicer other than the fact that the money I earn in the United States stretches slightly, and I do mean slightly on some things, not all things. Wouldn't stretch any on real estate or buying a car, basically any of the things that are inflated in the United States are also inflated in Canada. Like if you buy a $80 video game here in the United States, that same game is going to be $90 to $100 to $110 in Canada, because companies don't give a fuck about that difference. They're going to get the buying power out of you one way or another. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you can move to these countries, but if you still are buying a lot of shit or you're materialistic in any way, the corporation's still going to get theirs. And I've been overseas, and I can tell you the prices are comparable even with the currency conversions for some things. Now, if you bring your lifestyle down a notch and you do what the locals are doing and you live like the locals are living, then yeah, your American money is going to go a lot farther. How long do you think that's going to last? If we keep doing this stupid shit, if everybody leaves America, abandons ship, what do you think happens to your American dollar assets when you're overseas in these countries? I hope you've adapted and become part of the local economy at that point, and that you're earning money from jobs in that country, and you're part of that economy instead of bringing U.S. money into that economy. But right now, there is a concerted effort to unseat the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. Once that credit card is pretty much defaulted, so to speak, what do you think happens to the U.S. dollar? What do you think happens to your spending power? Remember, U.S. dollars are just printed up fucking made up numbers at this point that anyone can print. If you got a Visa credit card in your fucking wallet, what's in your wallet? Well, the money printing machine is in your wallet. You can print money right now if you got one of those. I can go in there and print me a fucking Starbucks latte right now if I want. And then just leave it in the debt for an unknown amount of time. How long do you think our U.S. dollar is going to carry you in these other countries if you just abandon the ship? If everyone just ups and leaves? Can't do it here no more. And then we'll go and fuck up some other country that was just an innocent bystander of all this shit, didn't participate in all the corrupt horseshit that we do, and now we're going to go over there and fuck them up. No, let's fix our problem. Let's clean up our mess. You don't move into a house, shit on the floor, let black mold grow everywhere, and then, I can't live here anymore, it's a shithole, and then move to another house and do the same fucking thing. That's not sustainable. You fix your house. You clean the shit up off the floor. You pick up your shit, all right, and clean up your mess. And it stands with that other video. If everyone cleaned up their own mess and stopped worrying about what your fucking neighbor's doing, we wouldn't collapse. But I realize I'm just polishing my knob on the deck of the Titanic. I'm aware we already are hitting the iceberg, and it's probably going to sink. But I'll be the last motherfucker off the boat, all right? Well, no, actually, Gen Z is going to be the last motherfucker off the boat. I'm in the band that's playing the music as the Titanic fucking sinks, all right? The other ones are like Rose and Jack from that fucking movie right now. Those are the Gen Zers and the Gen Alphas. They're going to be out there, we finally fell in love at the end of the fucking road, that. So... But yeah, I'm, down with the ship. I invested too much to abandon this, all right? Doesn't mean I won't move out of New York or any other fucking large city. That's really what you got to do. If you want to not abandon the country, go somewhere and don't fuck it up. I mean, the same rules apply. If you voted a certain way and spent a certain way and lived a certain kind of lifestyle, and then you uproot yourself and go to some little town, sleepy town in Kansas or West Virginia or one of these other low cost of living places with zero crime, it's just a matter of time before the prices go up there, the real estate goes up. It's a supply and demand thing. And you got to go to places of low demand to get better prices. That's just basic fucking economics. You can do it in New York too. There's houses under $100,000 in New York, but they come with fine print. If you're in a city and you're paying less than $100,000 for a house, well, guess what? There's people getting shot on your lawn. There's all kinds of weird transactions going on your street, and you're probably going to get your car stolen or broken into at some point. That being said, it really just it's getting to the point where you got to be a nomad to stay afloat, because all of these big cities are being run into the ground by corruption, and it's getting horrible. And as people are not realizing the errors of their ways and becoming more and more broke and blaming everybody but themselves in the process. And I'm not saying there's no one to blame. I'm not giving a pass to the government or the corporations here. The corporations are the ones that really are fucking the corruption and the bullshit. That is the number one cause of this. And when I say clean up your life, I mean try and insulate yourself from that control they have, from that. And it's all financial. How you spend your money, what you buy, what you don't buy. Corporations are made and broken that way. Now, they're going to try and make it so you have to rely on them. And that's what these big cities have done. Dependency. They want you dependent, whether it's through debt, got to pay the rent, got to pay the mortgage. They don't want you to be wealthy. They don't want you to have your own shit. They want you to pay them for the privilege of existing and then do all the work for them at the same time. And move away from that. That's my point. Get out of that shit. There's better ways to do things. But time will tell. But as much as I like to travel, and I wouldn't mind going to some of these countries you all tell me to go to, USA is my home. A lot of motherfuckers died and served. And Steve is a veteran. Look what it did to him. Serving this country. And then we're just going to, fuck it. Man, it's fucked, so we might as well leave. No. Nope, I'm not on board with that. You do you. I don't care. If you don't like it here, you can leave. It's fine. You're going to have better prospering. I'm not going to Mexico. I'm not going to fucking South America. I'm not going to the Philippines. I am going to Canada, but I'm not living there. I'm back and forth. We're allowed 6 months out of the out of a 12-month period, you're allowed 6 months on the other side of the border. And I split that up. My girlfriend comes here, I go there, that kind of thing. And I'm fine with that. That's fine. We still get our time together. Less now that I'm in the box, but when I'm not in the box, that's how that works. And that's my goal to get back to, where I'm in the box 6 months out of the year, obviously divided by 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, and then go to Canada and stretch my dollars a lot more over there. And Canada will like that. I'm boosting their local economy, although I am creating more demand, with my US dollars, which is going to drive up their prices because I'm consuming when I go there. But I'm not consuming here. So at the same time, I'm reducing the burden on the economy here. By earning the money here and spending it up there, you see how that goes. So there's things we can do. It's, the iceberg hasn't ripped the huge hole in the fucking hull yet. We're just now hitting it. We could probably still save everyone. Or at least get on the smaller boats in time, which is pretty much where we're at. Titanic's going to sink. Now you got to get on the smaller boats. And that's these places in the middle of nowhere that no one currently lives. Guess what? sooner or later somebody's going to want to live there because all the rest of the places went to shit. So I'm thinking if you went to one of this place in the middle of Kansas or these places in West Virginia, which West Virginia is very beautiful, by the way, from what I've seen in the videos and my personal visits there but as a truck, you can't really get into the nooks and crannies of West Virginia. It's a beautiful fucking area. No internet to save your life, though. No place to park a truck, except on their little turnpike that they got. But yeah, there's beautiful places that nobody lives at because there's nothing there. If you get in there first, and then everybody else wants to leave, and they don't necessarily want to leave the country, well, guess what? Demand goes up in those places, prices start to rise, but you got in there first. You're going to benefit the most financially. That's my thoughts on that. Or you can just get on the lifeboat. It's and lower it in and watch the Titanic sink from the sidelines. Because when you live in these places, you think they care what Trump does or any of this other shit. A lot of them are in states with no income tax, and your local taxes will be low because there's no infrastructure to pay for. I'm just saying there are solutions without leaving the country. It's just a question of giving up a lot of comfort. And that's what it boils down to. We've become so accustomed to having brand new cars and huge houses that one person lives in, and all of this kind of waste that we've done with our lives, bought on debt, a lot of it, according to the statistics. 1 in 5. That's 1 in 5 doom spending. That's got to be a interesting statistic. I have to look into that one. But I can believe it when I see how the credit card companies are and my own situation. So they'd make it pretty easy to fall into the trap and get lured into servitude. But as I said, that's just contributing to the huge bubble that's going to pop. It's going to pop. Titanic is probably going to sink. But it's not going to sink while I'm alive. It's a shitty attitude, right? Poor Gen Z. I feel bad for y'all. I mean, there's things that you do that I don't agree with, but you'll learn. It's not my responsibility to really. That's the other thing. I'm getting to the age now where my ship, I'm already half in the fucking grave here, Yeah, I could live to be 80, but it's unlikely given the health and my occupation and all the other shit going on. It's not really my job to fix this shit anymore. I'm turning 50. It's not my job to fix the country anymore. Nope. If you're young and watching this, that's your job. I'm sorry that they all made a mess for you. The boomers and, don't get me wrong. It's not like you made the mess. But it's your turn to clean it up. That's what the whole U.S. debt is built on. That's what all this debt-based spending is, kicking the can down the road. And you're paying the price through inflation, 1 point something trillion in credit card debt. Well, guess what? That causes inflation. And then when you go work at McDonald's and you can't afford shit, because, I started out working at McDonald's. You could actually maybe rent an apartment with a couple of people. Not anymore. Thanks to us spending our fucking ass off buying shit we don't need. Now it's gone to shit. And I ain't not going to be able to fix it. I can't even get my own shit straight. I'm working on my own fucking yard. And that's all you can do right now. Is work on your own yard. And if enough people did that, it probably would fix things. There'd be some hard times, some recession, depression type things. But just rein it in. Jerome Powell ain't going to do it. Trump ain't going to do it. Biden or whoever, the Democrats pick next when the pendulum swings the other way, and it will. Because nobody wants to say, oh, it's my fault. No, they're going to be, oh, Trump did it. Or, oh, no, Biden did it. It's going to be, people are still wrapped up in fucking politics. And you're on the fucking front deck with your fucking arms out on the Titanic as it's about to sink. If you're still thinking it's about the politics and votes, nope, we got into this mess despite people voting one way or another. The pendulum's been swinging for a great many years throughout my life. Yet here we sit with people ready to flee the Titanic. Well, maybe we could start getting your lifeboat together, and your lifeboat doesn't have to leave the Titanic. Guess what? It'll sink and your boat will still be floating. That's kind of the metaphor there. So that's my thoughts on it. I'm not going to leave the country. I don't begrudge anyone who does, especially if you're older. I get it. If you built a retirement right now and you're watching it just get pissed away as your spending power goes away, I get it. I understand. It's just not for me. I'm invested, all right? Too many people have died for what we got, and I'm not taking it for granted to the point where, I'm not just going to walk away from my country. That's not how I'm built. I've come from several generations of soldiers. People that fought harder and went through way more hardship than I have in my life. And I would argue a lot of the people whining on TikTok wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes in their generation. But it doesn't make it right that they helped run us into the ground either. I'm not giving them a pass on that. I still think the only solution is just cleaning up your own mess. I could be wrong. The fuck do I know? I'm not an expert. Just a asshole on the internet. There's a lot of us out here. Think we know everything. Talk like we know everything. We don't know shit. I don't know shit. That's why I'm in this. If I knew shit, I wouldn't be in this box. As somebody astutely pointed out in the comments, I'm not taking advice from somebody giving advice from a sleeper of a truck. I get it. I hear you. I wouldn't either. Although I do watch a couple truck drivers out here that actually have some intelligent things to say. Shout out to Big Ward the Genius. He's a trucker from Alabama, I think it is. I've been watching his videos lately. He's actually pretty entertaining to watch. But that being said, I'm just here to tell you my story, honestly. And if somebody benefits from my mistakes or my victories or whatever, I learned long ago on this channel that sometimes I do occasionally do something right. And that benefits other people, then that's worth it. It's worth sharing. Or if I make a mistake and it stops other people from making the same mistake, worth sharing. But I don't know. I just can't bring myself to fully leave America, all right? Doesn't mean I won't travel. Doesn't mean I don't go to Canada way more than I'd like. But, it's my home. It would be dumb to leave at age 50, having invested all of my time here. And like I said, they don't want us to do that. They like the money, but when it starts driving up their inflation, guess what? They ain't going to let you in. No. We want to bring immigrants to America, but they don't want us to go to their country at all. Some places you get killed just for being American. Probably be pretty cheap to live there. But, it'd be cheap until you end up on TV. I don't think that's for me. I'll take my chances with Kansas or one of these other states that nobody wants to go to. Because that's what it comes down to. You got to go where people aren't. That's it. You want to save money? You want to get yourself out of the mess? Structure your life in a way where you can live in the middle of fucking nowhere. That's it. Or on a piece of land or, homestead or van life or build a house or live in a tractor trailer for a while you stack some investments. to try and subsidize your time. That's what I'm doing. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? Tell me in the comments. You want to leave America? I know a lot of you actually, because I do a lot of nomad content. I get a lot of people that's what they did. They left the country and they're happy seemingly. I get it. More power to you. It's not going to be sustainable if a bunch of us do it though. And pretty soon, and you're able to do that because the US dollar is a world reserve currency. When that changes, and I say when that changes because if you look at history, it's going to, that US dollar is going to tank in value. And you won't be able to live in Thailand like a king for $800 a month. You just won't. Because Thailand ain't going to want your dollar anymore. You're going to have to live off the same income as all the motherfuckers who are native to that country. So look around. If you're already over there and you've already bought your hard assets, you're probably good. But if you look around at what the locals are making, how much are they bringing home? What's their life like? Do they have to have 50 people living in one house? Just saying. What do I know, though? So, bottom line is, if you want to fix your life, I'm not an expert on that. I just can tell you the things I've done over the years that worked and the things that I did that didn't. And what I'm seeing is a whole lot of shit, people doing shit that I have tested out thoroughly and I know doesn't work. And I can remember the things in my life that did work. And being debt-free with no bills and a paid-for shitty car and trying to live a life without rent, that's a big one. If you can find ways to live without paying rent, that's huge right there. Medical, that's another thing. Take care of your health. If not, they're going to take whatever wealth you got. So, that's how it is. But I'm not an expert on this, and I'm not claiming to be. I'm just saying I don't want to leave. That's it. That's what this video is all about. I'm going to stay on the Titanic, playing my music, watching it sink around me. And maybe I'll have a life jacket by then. I can't afford a fucking lifeboat. I got to see if I can find a life jacket. And hopefully I don't die of hypothermia when I get in the water. So, have a nice motherfucking day. And shit. And please, like and subscribe for more shit. And I'll make more shit. Let's keep this going. I want to see this channel continue to grow, and then maybe I won't have to lock myself in a box to survive. But as of right now, I'm just chugging along. And I gotta admit, I'm gonna tell you, it's hard to do the right thing. It is difficult. I don't like being in here. I am miserable. I've done 21 years in this fucking thing, minus the 5 years of occasional semi-retirement. And I can tell you, I'm done. I want to be done. I'm tired. People are trying to kill me out here. I don't want to die out here. I don't want to die in this box. I want to die on a trail somewhere, or maybe I want to have a grabber in my sleep. I don't know. Something not very horrible. Which, let's face it, if I die in this truck, it's not going to be pretty or fun. That's all. Just trying to get ahead. Any tips in the comments? How can you survive on the Titanic? AKA America. Fuck yeah. How are you going to make it without leaving, without fleeing? What things can you do to survive? And I've done a lot of them, and I'm trying to get back to doing them, to be honest. Back to being debt-free. No bills, no pressure. Paying liability insurance and my phone bill. Being able to live off of the $18 an hour of the gig economy, that kind of stuff. I want to get back to that, being able to fill in the gaps, and it involves sacrifice and not having the things that everybody says we have to have. That's what I'm trying to get back to. But who knows? I'll probably fuck it up and end up back to square one at some point. Have a nice motherfucking day. And shit. And can we maybe try and fix the country before we leave it? And I don't mean by voting. No. That's been tested thoroughly and it didn't fucking work. Just saying.